you'll know why. So anyway, I thought it'd be great if we could take about 40 minutes, 50 minutes, and just kind of give you an idea what I'm going to bring to this seminar when we do this. Now, I don't want to get into the details, but I've been talking to doctors from Australia, a couple from New Zealand even, about what's going on in Australia, and it's interesting. Back a couple of decades ago, a guy named John Nesbitt, the most famous futurist there ever was, who kind of predicted what happens in business and not necessarily dentistry, but he wrote a book called Megatrends, and the whole point of the book was this: that if you look in certain areas, and in the United States, if we look at, I would say probably every state in the United States is like a different country. But in the U.S., if you look at California and you look at Florida, things that are happening there now will be happening in Dallas, in the middle of the country, in 4 or 5 years. In a backwater, out in the country type state, it might happen in 10 years. But those are the two areas they're the earliest adapters, the things that happen quickly. So if something bad's happening there, you can count on it getting to you sometime. Something's good happening there and you are proactive, you can take that information and look brilliant. And so for most of my dental career, and I was a lab technician when I was in high school and college all the way through dental school, and then I'd practiced dentistry for almost 40 years now. My greatest talent was looking at areas, trendsetters and early adapters, and kind of figuring out how that would affect my practice. Now, what does that have to do with Australia? In a lot of ways, Australia is way ahead, maybe in a challenging way, of federal and government intervention into healthcare. On the other side, you're a little bit behind the United States when it comes to some of the things that are happening in healthcare. So this is a rapidly changing kind of thing. It's like climate change. And we went through the U.S., we went through 3 horrible recessions, the last one ending in 2008. It totally upset all of the economy in the United States, still has effect on it. But from 2008 till today, every year since that, dentists in the U.S. have made less money. They haven't been as productive. It changed the face of things. Now, a lot of dentists here are going, well, we'll just, stick our heads in the sand or hunker down, and then in a year or two, this will blow over and it'll go right back where it started from. We'll be right back to, everything's great and cool and we're making a lot of money and patients are beating down the doors and everything. That's a huge mistake. Because this wasn't the perfect storm. Because in a perfect storm, whether it's a hurricane or an earthquake or something like that, there's destruction of property and life, but there's always this hope, and there's always this feeling that it'll come back and be as good, or we'll rebuild, it'll be better. That's not going to happen this time in healthcare. And so I want to take just a moment and kind of set the stage for you, and I hate to be doom and gloom anytime, because I'm real positive about dentistry and healthcare in general, but there are some trends out there that you need to be aware of. I mean, if you think about it, if we look at vision, if we look at pharmacies, if we look like medicine, they've already fought these battles and lost. And so there's several things affecting us now in dentistry, and I'm not sure they're affecting you in exactly the same way. So whenever I talk, I'm from Texas, and I know I'm probably pretty hard to understand, but you need to kind of Aussie-size this. You need to take an Australian view of this and take what I'm talking about and plug it into where you are, because we are so close to being the same that you can take advantage of this and actually improve your practices. In the U.S., I think probably one of the biggest changes we've faced is student debt. We're opening dental schools all over. And I've been spending like the last 6 months reading all of your journals, any information I can get from people talking to doctors. And here in the U.S., we opened 2 new dental schools last year. There's another 2 opening on the East Coast. They're just opening one in New York City that will be graduating 500 graduates every year. We've gone from 3,000 graduates 10 years ago to 5,200. And now with the addition of these 3 or 4 other dental schools, and there's more waiting, it's going to be well over 6,000 dentists every year. And this has changed the balance of things. These dental students go to dental school, and the reason these schools are opening is because they're for profit. These schools want this income. And so they're starting to go to these dental schools. There's more applicants for dental schools than there are medical schools. And all of a sudden, these kids are getting out of school with an average of around $325,000 to $550,000 worth of debt. They come out, their school debt is called due, they have to start paying it down, and they're not at real low interest rates. It's usually 7 to 9%. And so dental students come out and they have to find a job. And the average dental practice in the United States and in Australia is not poised to take on associates or partners. There's not enough new patients. They don't understand the business of dentistry. All of these things go together to make this difficult for a dental student. And this creates a ripple effect that I know in Australia, a lot of dental students have to open their own practice, even though they can't afford it, because there aren't the jobs that they need. Same thing here. Now, part of these 3 recessions that hit us is that we had doctors who had retired from dentistry. In fact, back 10, 15 years ago, with 3,000 students graduating, we had 6,000 doctors retiring. So it was always this great ratio. It's gone. It's never coming back. And so doctors who retired, 15, 20 years ago are coming back into dentistry because they didn't save enough money. And doctors who would have normally retired are not going to retire. They're postponing this so that they can put more money away in their war chest for retirement. And now students are doing one more crazy thing. In our schools, the ratio of male to female, there's more females in dental schools now than there are males. And the weird thing about this is that these guys and gals that have almost $500,000 worth of debt when they come out of dental school have come up with a brilliant strategy. They're falling in love with another dental student. So now they're coming out, 2 hungry dentists with all this debt, married, moving into the same location or same area and trying to make a living. It's horrible. Now, we have insurance companies, and for you, it's probably more governmental intervention than we have. But for us, insurance companies have become a blight. They're the 800-pound gorilla that dictate what we can charge. And, whether you're in Canada, you're in England, you're in Australia, where the government can dictate fees and dictate, where you do, what you do, how you do it. For us, insurance has gotten where it's almost an average of 74% of the population has some form of dental insurance. And as they've, it's taken decades for this to happen, but it's gotten crazy. We had one group of dental insurance called Delta Dental, probably one of our most challenging group. I'm sure we're recording this, so I probably shouldn't say anything real negative, but they sent a letter out to 2 whole states stating that if you take Delta Dental, you can't take any other dental insurance. And now that's going to the courts for antitrust. But insurance companies are doing something kind of weird. They have arbitrary drop clauses. In other words, more and more dentists are signing up. Almost 94% of all dentists in the United States are signed up in network for insurance. In other words, they basically work for insurance companies now. And they can drop you. They're doing something called audit focus, where they go in and they just decide arbitrarily that if this group does more than this many crowns, just drop them. Because we have thousands of doctors working for us or, in network for us, and we don't have to take doctors that are clinically super competent. Even if the patient wants it, they've never had any complaints, they can just drop it. I had one client in Philadelphia, just outside of Philadelphia, that was using a group called MetLife, did almost $1 million last year with MetLife. They dropped him. He calls me, he's just desperate. I mean, that's a huge, $1 million, that's a huge part of his income. No reasoning, it was just an audit focus, they drop it. There is no recourse. They get to make the rules. Corporations, I guess probably back 20 years ago, money from New York and banking industry looked at dentistry and goes, okay, these guys have got 25 to a 50% profit margin. They don't know anything about business. They don't understand marketing. They don't understand the subtleties of really dealing in a consumer-driven business. And so they started going out and buying dental practices and opening offices. And they failed miserably. They did. But these people aren't stupid. And they're back. And they're back strong. In the U.S., corporations are taking over 7% of the market every year. 2 years ago, they took over 23 million patients, pulled them out of the private practice, and drug them into corporate dentistry. Now, we used to complain that corporate dentistry was horrible, they didn't do very good work, and that's a silly comment. Because with more and more students coming out with more and more debt and no place to go, these are good dentists working for corporations. And what's going to make the tipping point is this. And I've never heard anybody describe it this way, but I come from 7 generations of attorneys, so I have a lot of business background. I look at things a little bit differently. But the tipping point in corporations is going to be this. And it's happening right now in the U.S., and if it's not happening where you are, it's going to. We have 52% of our graduating classes being female. Currently, only 32% of females end up owning practices. Now, on the other hand, the males are 67%. So, more and more students are coming out of dental school and not owning their own practices. In fact, there's a group called Heartland that's a corporation, very good group. Their practices are very good, but they're going in and taking large chunks of students that are graduating, almost 90% from certain dental schools, and putting them in corporate dentistry. Now, that's not so bad, but the ripple effect of this is if we don't have dentists open their own practices, then the value of your practice begins to slip because there's no buyers for that practice when you want to retire. And in a corporate setting, you know, they may pay a fairly attractive salary initially and they have great benefits, but in a corporate setting, at some point, when they make profits, the profits don't go to the employees. That would be the doctors. The profits go to the shareholders. And once that starts happening, the tipping point is past being able to turn this around. I think in the U.S. we've already passed that point. So I work very, very diligently to preserve the independent practice of dentistry. And there's just certain things that you have to do. Now, we also have national health care now. I mean, if you look at Canada, you look at England, and you look at Australia, you can kind of see the evolution of that. But what's interesting in the U.S. is the people that we buy goods and services from have decided that corporations are the future. And so people like Schein, Patterson, I mean, Schein's a $10.7 billion company. They deal out the back door to corporations, national corporations, at somewhere between a 30 and a 40% discount for fees, services, equipment, supplies. And so the very people that we interface with to buy our goods from are dealing out the back door to really put us down as far as independent contractors, independent dentists. So what are we going to have to do to actually survive this climate change? And I'm going to do this briefly because when we get together in August, I'm going to sit down and show you how to have 100% case acceptance, how to have an unlimited number of dental patients, how to eliminate cancellations and no-shows, how to create a team that will remove the stress from your practice and create kind of a purpose-driven, doctor-led, staff-owned culture in your practice to make this where every year you can have double-digit increase in productivity while lowering your overhead. I have yet to find a dental practice that I couldn't help them get down to a 50 to 60% overhead, and generally low 50%. That I couldn't double their new patients. That I couldn't take the information that we're going to present and you walk away with this. Now, I have nothing to sell you, okay? I mean, I've started dental labs. I've started practice management companies. You know, I'm just there to make sure that you do better in dentistry, that you actually have the practice you always wanted. So what's that going to take? Well, one, you're going to have to take on kind of a culture in a business sense of being more lean and mean. I think the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, and into the 2000s, uh, we've been kind of unaware of the business of dentistry in that while the U.S. has had inflation of about 2% maybe, I mean, it's been very flat here for the last decade and a half, 2 decades. The inflation rate in healthcare has been closer to 8 to 11%. So if you're only increasing your business by about 5 or 6% a year, you're sliding backwards. And so it's gotten to be very important. I mean, you guys know what the significance of an $83,333 a month practice is? It's $1 million practice. Now, that's not all that much productivity because that $83,333 a month, a third of that should be coming from hygiene. But the significance of having $1 million practice, because it's just an easy number to look at, is that every percentage point is worth $10,000. So let's say we have a hygiene department that only does 25% of the production instead of 33. Well, from a business perspective, that's 8% low, or in this case, 1% being 10,000. That's $80,000 you didn't make that year. Or your collection rate, let's say it's only 98% or 96%. That's 3 or 4%, or $30,000-$40,000 that you left on the table. So every percentage point makes a huge difference. So where before purchasing goods and services we got kind of lazy about it, you've got to dot the I's and cross the T's and be much more aggressive about who you buy services and supplies from, because every percentage point counts. And in this seminar, I'm going to show you kind of what the benchmarks of a super general dental practice looks like. I mean, they kind of changed the name of the seminar to super dental practice because they thought, well, the word general would be off-putting for the audience. But I'm going, really, everybody's a general dental practice. We all start out that way. And then if we grow, we change a little bit. I mean, I think every practice should be placing their own implants. I think every practice should be doing some ortho. I think every practice should have other services that you offer. And what I'm seeing as a trend is a lot of the considered just specialty practices are struggling. I mean, in the U.S., prosthodontists are kind of non-existent. I mean, they've become, well, I guess everybody else has become, quote, somebody that does larger cases, cosmetic, implants, the things that prosthodontists did. So it's one of those specialists that really suffered. In the U.S., ortho is down almost 40% because of doctors doing Invisalign, other services that that normally a specialty practice would do. So everything's changing, and so we need to create this culture of lean and mean. It's no longer, we can't take the convenience of actually having marginal staff for us. I mean, it's so important that every person adapt to this and be productive and stand side by side. We have to partner with our staff to make these things happen. So everything's important. I think the second thing would be we've got to embrace consumerism. Now, consumerism really isn't a word. It's kind of made up. But I think the best definition of consumerism would be giving our patients what they want at a time they want at a price they can afford. So we need to understand that dentistry is a small consumer-driven business. As the number of dentists increase, the consumers have a wider and wider range of doctors to choose from. This is like restaurants. Great restaurants do really good, but probably 70-80% of restaurants struggle. And we're going to see that in the future unless you're willing to start changing and adapting to this new culture, this new dental economy. So we have to embrace consumerism. And along with consumerism, we have to embrace change, because in dentistry, change has been a constant, okay? Number three, and I just titled this ABM, and it's always be marketing. Everything you do is marketing. In fact, if you think about it, the way you answer the phone, in fact, everything you do, I mean, absolutely everything, the hours you choose, whether you take this insurance, that insurance, what services you offer, the range of patients that you try to attract, everything you do is precisely designed to give you the result you're getting. Now, if that's the case, I mean, if you've defined that result and you don't like the result, you can't just work harder or longer. You have to work different. And I'm going to bring different, and you've never heard the things that I'm going to talk about when I come there. Different's going to be really different here. But the brilliance in this is that it's so logical when you look at it, and it's so simple and obvious when you think that our audience is defined by the demographics we live in, the people, their income, their educational level, their age, whether they have children or not. And I guess we walked away and didn't realize that, you can't get better at giving people what they don't want. If you don't understand your audience, the potential clients out there, you won't grow. Now, every year that you're open, I mean, we all start out as a general practice. We do whatever it takes. We start kind of branding our practices. We start growing. We change. We mature. But again, not only we keep learning and changing, but we need to keep adding services to increase the range of patients that we actually see. And so, again, over the last 20 years, I've seen the trends being less range of patients. People are defining themselves as a cosmetic implant sedation doctor. Well, that's great, but we know, I mean, and I've done this for Australia too. We know exactly what people look for in an organic search on the internet. And it's kind of interesting because doctors kind of miss this as being a point of contention. But when we look at every place that anybody looks for dentist, ever since the internet ever formed, the number one search has always been dentist in a location. So for me, I practice in McKinney, Texas, 30 miles north of Dallas. So they're going to type in McKinney, dentist in McKinney, Texas. That represents 47% of every organic search for any type of thing dental. The word dentist or dental and a location. Number two is braces. It represents about 14.8% of all the searches. I mean, between the two, 47 and 14.8, we've got 65, 67% of all the searches right there. They're not looking for an orthodontist. They're not looking for orthodontics. They're typing in braces. So your domain names need to start including not your name, not, Abernathy Dental or whatever. It needs to be, ChelseaDentistry.com, or in my case, it was McKinneyDentist.com. We've got to start taking advantage of the range of people out there and where they're looking. In fact, number three is insurance, and then you never even see implant, sedation, or cosmetic until you see the last three categories that anyone has ever searched for online for dentistry. It represents 3 to 4% of the searches, but only 1% of the searchers. Yet over the last decade, we've kind of honed in on implants, sedation, cosmetic. And when you do that, you're missing the point. You're only going to get that 1 to 2% of the population out there. If you had marketed to dentist and location, braces, and insurance, all of those people need implants, sedation, and cosmetic, but you're going to miss the point. So we've got to get better at understanding the programs that our government forces on us, along with insurance companies, and really the overall desires that our demographic defines. And we can get all of this online. And so we're going to talk about that at great depth and help you do better. In fact, I'm going to say this fact. I haven't told anybody else yet, but for anybody that signs up for the seminar, I want to make sure you get more out of this than just the 4 or 5 hours that I'm speaking. And say I've got nothing to sell you, I'm not in Australia. We don't have coaches. I can't do that. But I'd like to do this for everybody that signs up. I want to send you a growth analysis spreadsheet. Now it has 3 pages. All you have to do is fill in the first 2 pages. Very, very simple. The third page is created from the first 2 pages. But if you'll fill that in, I'm going to ask everybody to bring it to the seminar. But if you'll fill it in, send that to me along with 1 week's schedule and a copy of your profit and loss statement. I'll sit down and talk to each and every one of you for at least an hour, going over your specific practice, your numbers, and help you see any blockages there and discuss strategies that you can do. And then I will email you information specifically for you to help your practice do better. Now, next, we've got to get better at understanding dentistry in the sense of case presentation and case acceptance. Because in a consumer-driven business, nothing happens until the patient says yes. In fact, whether you want to do the example of being voted off the island, but people vote with their feet. And if you keep seeing the back of their heads and your recall system isn't there and you're not getting people to say yes, there's something that can be improved. And so we've got to get used to the idea that we have to give the patients more of what they want. Now remember, the definition of consumerism is giving what they want, when they want it, at a price they can afford. So fitting it into their budget is incredibly important. Figuring out what they want, their dental IQ, their budget, and everything is incredibly important. And we will go over the subtleties of this and how to implement this into your practice, how to take it back, and on Monday after the seminar, be able to change the face of your practice, okay? So we've got to get used to the idea that, yes, we're required by the standard of care to tell people what they need. But in a consumer-driven business, we have to be very sensitive to what the patient wants and try to give them that. So if you're an overly assertive doctor, in other words, you're really aggressive about selling, you kind of come off as a dentist turned timeshare salesman sometimes. And oftentimes, if you're so aggressive that it comes off that you want the dentistry more than the patient does, you've crossed a line that you can never get back over and the patient will leave. You can always tell if that's the case if they want a second opinion, they want to talk to their spouse, or they'll call you back. You've done something horribly wrong. Now, the other side is the non-assertive doctor. That, he's only going to present what the patient, he knows the patient will actually say yes to. They use waffle words, and they won't look at the patient when they're talking to them. And so I'm going to show you how to mitigate all of that by partnering with your staff. But we've got to get better at really listening to our patients. Now, we've already said this a little bit in adapting to consumerism, but we have got to embrace change. And again, I think we all get lip service to that. And again, you're going to be kind of, I don't know, maybe put back just a little bit when we're talking, because this change attitude, being aggressively willing to change, is huge. I mean, Stephen Covey's book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, talked about the traits that really incredibly intelligent, successful people, what they do, their habits. And number 1 was beginning with the end in mind. And so I need you, even before this seminar, to start thinking about, where are you now? I mean, you need to know that. Where are you now? And what are you willing to do to preserve the independent practice of dentistry? What are you willing to make your practice grow? And so this embracing change and becoming proactive is hugely important. I was talking about John Nesbitt's book, Megatrends. I mean, you have to start looking for trends in Australia. It's probably easier in Australia than it is in the US, because you have a tendency to congregate in 4 or 5 large cities, and with vast open areas in between. We've got a couple, three large cities in every state, and again, states tend to define those trends, and so it should be easier to identify those. And from what I'm reading, one of the huge challenges that you're facing is that you basically have open borders to other dentists in the UK. That there are a lot of foreign dentists coming in, more and more dental schools opening, more and more graduates, and the prediction on the number of graduates is appalling when we compare it to the population. You really can't grow a practice once the population of dentists or dentist population goes less than one dentist per 2,000. Now, the town that I'm in, where my main practice was, the ratio currently of dentist to population is one dentist per 685. Now, we have 4 postal codes or zip codes for us, postal routes in this town of about 250,000. In one of the codes, which butts up against another town, the ratio is one dentist for every 128 people. And of the 128, 47% are kids. You can't make a living there. Yet, dentists still open their doors there. They're not going to places that make it possible for them to be super successful. So, what I'm seeing is that we're not taking advantage of the natural marketing and finding a location that makes it possible for you to do great in dentistry. Now, the last thing that I want to kind of touch on, the last thing I want to talk about is culture. And I find that, we all went to dental school, and of course, I've never been in a dental school in Australia, but I'd have to say that here in the U.S., we fail miserably at the business of dentistry or teaching business skills in dental school. It's a daunting task, and I'm not criticizing dental schools or the professors there. I mean, I think they're incredibly good at what they do, but they're faced with a daunting task of helping you become kind of barely not dangerous when you graduate. I mean, they've got so many things that they have to teach you, that the business side is one of those things that seems to be just minimized or marginalized. And I've got to say, too, that the programs I've seen at business in dental schools haven't been very good. I would have to say, too, that the professors and the curriculum in the business side of dentistry and dental schools is not keeping up with what's going on out in the world. And so 90% of dentists are practicing 20, 30-year-old dentistry when it comes to the business side. That's what makes us so attractive to outside corporations. You can see this, as I say, in hospitals. Most doctors have graduated to or gravitated towards large hospitals. Pharmacies are owned by large corporations instead of mom and pop deals. Vision is all corporations, and we're destined to face that fate if we don't change. And so we need to change the culture, and it involves leadership. And no one talks about leadership in dentistry, or how to really make leadership a key component in your office. Every system that I bring will be designed for a non-assertive doctor, a doctor who in the past has really struggled to really grasp what he needs in his practice. And it's based on 3 tenets. One is doctor-led. Number 2 is purpose-driven. Number 3 is staff-owned. It's like a 3-legged stool. And I would say of those 3, the purpose is the most important one. And it's the why of what you do. And while we're going to discuss this when I get there, overall purpose is the why. And I think the best answer is to say to serve patients, but in a particular way. really tempered with a great business strategy. Number two is leadership. And the number one job of a leader is to define reality, define what's core in your practice. Few doctors do this. And, if you consider yourself to be a leader and you look over your shoulder and there's nobody back following you, you're just taking a walk. And I see most doctors fall short in creating this culture to create a successful practice. The last one is staff ownership. And I would have to say, looking back over my entire career, that culture that I helped create, that staff ownership, where the staff feel like they own the practice. I mean, they treat it like they're their own. I trained them well. I hired the best staff I could, and there's tricks to that too. Finding the staff, training them, and how you integrate them into this business model. That the staff that I did this with, average stay for staff in my office was 14 and a half years. And it's really longer than that if you consider I've had 22 partners in various practices. In my main practice, I had 3. Well, actually 2 in myself. But again, when they came in, I had to hire employees to work with them too, assistants at least. And we had to hire maybe more hygienists. So it pulled that down. So I had lots of staff that had been with me for almost 34, 35 years. And so that creates an incredible esprit de corps. Okay, this where this culture drives everything. It's almost like we have a TV show called Dancing with the Stars. It's kind of a stupid show, but it's one of those things where my wife calls me in, and I don't watch shows like that, but she goes, "Come here to look at this." And there was a guy named Emmett Smith who's a huge guy. He's a big football player in the day, and I'm thinking he's going to be a horrible dancer, and he's probably going to break the little girl he has to dance with. And he was horrible. I mean, he was terrible. Then you fast forward to the end of the season where they're, every week they had it, they would dance, and then one person would lose through votes, and they'd be kicked off the show. Well, it came down to Emmett Smith. And so in that 6-week period, I watched him dance The Last Dance. He was perfect. I was just going, this guy, he's got to weigh 280, 90 pounds. I mean, he's just huge guy. He looked incredibly graceful. And in a sense, with our patients and with our staff, we're dancing around our patients and going through the day. And again, if you do this right, you become almost unconsciously competent at what you do. Everybody starts out in dental school, and it's called Maslow's hierarchy of learning. Everyone starts out, and the top rung, number 1, is you don't know what you don't know. Everybody did that in dental school. You get there, you didn't know anything, but you actually didn't know you didn't know anything. And so the minute they start teaching you in dental school, we get to the second one. You go, wow, now I know I don't know. Okay? And then 3 is about where you graduate. You are consciously skilled. I can remember that first patient I had. Patient comes in and said, "Can you take out this wisdom tooth?" Absolutely. I always had an overestimation of what I could do. Okay? And it always kind of worked out okay. So I make an appointment. I mean, I was willing to do whatever it took. Okay, patient comes in, I numb him up. Okay? Now, the night before, I was studying my oral surgery book and my gross anatomy book and trying to get ready because I probably hadn't taken out that many teeth. So I had the books laid out in one operatory. I'm in the other operatory. I said, okay, bite on a piece of cotton here, and we're going to let that get numb. Then I go and flip through the books real quick and look. Next thing, make flap, don't cut the lingual nerve, whatever it was. And I'd go in there, do that, have bite on a cotton, go back and read some more and go back. And I finally I was consciously skilled. I literally had to think about what I did. But ultimately, in a great business, ultimately in your career, ultimately in something you're passionate about, you need to go to number 4. And number 4 is becoming unconsciously skilled. This would be like an incredibly good martial artist, where if someone came to me and swung, I don't have to think about, okay, raise hand, block, grab, twist, strike. Okay? It's automatic. And great dentists, great attorneys, great doctors, great anything. People at the top of their field become unconsciously skilled. That's what we're going to work towards in this seminar. So, where are you now? I mean, what are you willing to do to take your practice to the next level? Now, the people at Marketing Dentistry have been kind enough that they're making you an offer. And there's a special code. And in the code is just my name. It's a discount code, and it's just Michael Abernathy 100. So you'll need to go to the website www.marketingdentistry.com.au, log in and get your ticket for this seminar. I mean, the seats will run out. You know, I mean, this is a little braggadocious, but I mean, you've not heard people tell you what I'm going to tell you, and it's going to make a huge difference. And I wouldn't want to be the doctor that wasn't there, that didn't get that information, because I'm going to lay it all out for you. I'm only there just for you. I want to make sure that you get what you need to make this the best seminar you've ever gotten. And you know, in a way, because you're going to be gathering information about your practice, it'll be an eye-opener for you. When you fill out that spreadsheet, the biggest feedback I get from doctors is they're going, gosh, I mean, just the revelation of looking at these key practice indicators that I'm asking them to look at, and then having me explain how they fit into the overall picture. I mean, they'll learn more in an hour over the telephone with me than they did in all of dental school. They'll just, oh my gosh, it's incredible. So you know, I want to make sure you don't miss this opportunity. You know, I really look forward to meeting each one of you at the Marketing Dentistry 2016 in Sydney. I think it's August 13. Brisbane, it's August 17. Melbourne, it's August 20. I'm going to see you all there. And so again, I want to thank you. If you have any questions or you know, please just, you know, contact me. Let me know. There's no reason to wait until I actually get there. I want you to come up, shake my hand, and tell me, oh, I'm the guy that sent you this, or I'm the lady that sent you that. I want to make sure that this is the best experience you've ever had in a seminar. So thank you very much.